Yeah, the whole crew. We got the whole crew. Let's see, make sure shows it so we can see it. Sorry, I took time to go into, well, that's one of my favorite subjects. We could talk about GPS. I guess the Greeks are more exciting to some people. Oh. I don't have Teams running. What's with that? All right, where's the... Oh, great. Rebooted itself. You guys have that problem?
It said good morning.
It did. It was nice, wasn't it? All right. Great. Had everything set up, everything ready to go. Okay, is it coming up?
His word is not responding.
Well, that's because it's trying to open something big. Come on, baby. I should have started. These computers get more picky.
I was going to say that's what you get for talking about satellites and privacy.
Well, let's try and get there. Had it all ready to go. Ah, there we go. What?
Well, what other class did we talk about this?
I know.
All right, all right.
My computer is smart enough to tell.
We created a distraction, so it's kind of on us.
Oh, okay.
Well, and you're not going to find this. Try your AI. If you don't have somebody to explain this stuff to you, you're going to get all kinds of bogus, information. Not because they're dumb, it's because things, it's like the, anybody have that book at home, How Things Work? You ever heard about that? The kids thing, the visual dictionary?
Well, we have the way things work, but it's not necessarily like a kid's thing. But
It's really cool. Yeah, but do you know, go look at the airplane section. The airplane section is completely wrong. 100% completely wrong. And that makes me wonder how much else is completely wrong. Because the airplane, they say that the rudder makes the airplane turn. Rudders do not make airplanes turn. That was what the Wright brothers learned right away. Anyway, and it will kill you if you think that's true, so don't try it. Well, maybe that's good for people that steal our planes.
well, if it makes a ship turn, why doesn't it make an airplane turn? Okay, sorry.
You know what? You asked the person who can answer that question, but I shouldn't. Maybe we need a supplemental class in aviation science. Yeah. All right. We're in the Praetorium. We've got Jesus in the Praetorium. Okay, and here's a translation of 9:9. He came anew into the Praetorium, the governor's courtroom, and Pilate makes a logical argument to Jesus. From where are you? But Jesus, a conclude for himself, did not give to him. Jesus, a conclude for himself. In other words, Jesus did not give him. We translate this as Jesus did not answer him. It's interesting because it's not exactly what it says. Jesus did not conclude for himself to him. So, did he speak at all? Did he say he just did not conclude? The question of where are you? From where are you? Anybody remember where that question came up before? Who asked the question? The people in Jerusalem said, where are you from? And remember the Pharisees answered, he's, from Nazareth. His father we know his father, right? And that wasn't the question. The question was about his that he was God, right? It was from heaven. Pilate knows, now they don't have a spy network like they want to show in The Chosen. I mean, it's really cute to have that guy Gratis, whatever his name is, that, supposedly is like the super spy, urban spy dude. You know, he's a pretty cool character. But look, the Romans didn't do that. They were more forthright, and they were tricky, but they hired other people to do that kind of work. Anyway, but Pilate knew. You think Pilate didn't know where Jesus was from? All you got to do is ask, where's Jesus from Nazareth from? Who is in Grant's tomb? Right? Because when they say his name, now, why doesn't our author in John tell us every time they see Jesus, what should they be saying? Jesus ben Joseph at Nazareth, right? Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth. And when they asked for him in the garden, what did they ask for? Who are you looking for? Jesus from Nazareth, right? They skipped the Ben Joseph. The reason they skipped the Ben Joseph, well, maybe they didn't. Why would our author do that? Yeah. You know, when you're talking, every word is a buck or whatever. I don't know, it's expensive. Calculate it out, right? It's, you know, a scroll is a 40-acre farm. A book was a 40-acre farm, we know, from France, back when they hand manuscript books. So this is not cheap work. So I'm gonna cut off because, okay, he's just Jesus. You know what Jesus I'm talking about. Anyway, Pilate knows where he's from. He probably knows his mother, his father, his sister, his brother. He knows everybody because that's what Romans were not, I don't know, we like to think of the Romans as kind of bungling dupa heads that are overzealous regulators. Yeah, they kind of are and they kind of aren't. But
Did they have another census since the time of Jesus' birth?
we don't know.
Because that would be, I mean, we know they kept records and stuff because they were doing stuff like that.
They kept records like crazy. Yeah, they were the record keepers. And they kept records,
Like the Nazis did, everything.
on everything. Well, kind of like we do, right? The IRS knows everything about you. And so do your banks, and your banks are telling the IRS. Yeah. We have this problem. There's a penchant. Well, remember, we're the Greeks would never have done this, right? The Greeks would think, let's have books, and let's fill the books with, good philosophy and good, they loved fiction. They loved, the Aeneid, the Aeneid is Virgil in Latin, but the Odyssey and the Iliad, right? They're into that, but they would memorize it, but that's what they would want in their books. What do the Romans want?
Numbers. Straightforward.
Yeah, numbers. What's that?
How this works.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
right.
way things work.
That's where it came from.
As long as it's right. Don't try to fly an airplane based on it. Yeah.
They're not there yet.
Yeah, they're not there yet. Anyway, we are like the Romans, right? I mean, we actually need to be more like the Greeks, I think. But we are like the Romans. And you notice, if you look at our conversation now, in my cigar group, our conversation is mostly about, politics and philosophy and, but what is most, this is true. And the Army guys would say this about us, about the Air Force all the time. What do you think they said the Air Force always talks about? No, you're being too kind. Sports and women. It's back to the old days with, when even then, even today, that's all the guys talk about, sports and women. Women may move into a more, thing. But what did the Army guys talk about? You know what the Army guys talk about? Politics and history. You know why? Because they're guys on the ground going out to fight the wars. You got to know history and politics because the politics may be the thing sending you to the next battlefield. And the Air Force were like, oh, we don't care. What was the score, right? Because we're going to go drop some bombs on them. And it's like, sayonara, bad boys. That's it. It's
Less of a commitment.
Yeah, less of a physical commitment, right? Until you have to live in the cots, which I've done with the Army. Oh, man, that's a pain. Anyway, we are kind of Roman thinkers, right? And we should probably be more like Greek figures. But the Greeks were, right, they're hoplites. And all of them are hoplites. The legionnaires are Romans, but they're the people that are specially trained. You see what I'm saying? Every Greek had a part in every male Greek was committed to potential death on the battlefield because every one of them was a hoplite, all the free Greeks. In the Roman world, the legions did that work for them, like we have, professional military, right? So the average Roman was less concerned about that thing, about that is, some of the political issues and things, except for their business. But they're all in the figures. It's all in the money. It's all in the figures. And also, what gladiator won the last thing? But I think Pilate knew all this about Jesus' physical. So what is he asking? This is a similar question to the question was asked about Jesus before. John gave us an extensive dialogue and logos on the issue. Pilate knows where Jesus is from physically. That's not what he's asking. The question about Jesus and God. Because Pilate already concluded for himself, made a logical argument that Jesus is the king of the Judeans. If you're a king of the Judeans, that is a claim to deity. Well, at least in the Roman worldview. And like I said, we want to see the Romans as, they don't believe in anything, but they do. They do. They believe, and we should believe. Here's my thing. Pilate's response is reasonable and logical. He's a man of his time. Oh, wake up. Not allowed to go to sleep. He's a man of his time and a person of reason. A man of his time and a person of reason. We think, and this is what I say, I would argue in the modern age of empiricism, we have completely ruined the ability of the average person to make a proper conclusion about anything. Because when you're confronted with this question, what question? Someone like Jesus, our proper response should be something like Pilate, right? A modern person would completely ignore the potential for the supernatural, for God, and conclude that the reasons are only physical and measurable. The age of empiricism, you have the age of reason. In the age of reason, the logisticians were winning. The logisticians said that I can use mathematics and logic to prove anything. The problem was that the age of logic and reason moved into the age of empiricism. In the age of empiricism, what is the answer?
You have to be able to see it, feel it, observe it.
Yeah. Can I measure it, right? In the age of reason, you didn't have to measure it. It was logic and reason. It's philosophy. That's the Greek thing. The Romans are empiricists. The Romans don't care. The Romans care only in the fact that I can build it, right? Philosophically, if you write it down, well, philosophically you can build this. No, they don't care. They want to build it. Build it, right? It's empiricism. It's measurable, which isn't unreasonable, but we need a mix. Pilate is that mix. Pilate is that guy. He is the force of, both the truth, and yet he's a force of reason, but he acknowledges the supernatural, the spiritual. Pilate asks, do you refuse to speak to me? Don't you realize I have the power to either free you or crucify you? And, that's our NIV. The King James, very similar, but look how long this is. Then said Pilate unto him, speakest thou not to me? Knowest thou not that I have the power to crucify thee and have the power to release thee? This is kind of long in Greek. He makes a logical argument, certainly accordingly to him. Pilate does. To me, know or not, Laelish, you utter words, know not, you stare at. That is because I have conferred authority of power, delegated empowerment, I hold to let you go, to release, dismiss, loose away you, and authority I hold to fence with stakes, crucify you. Here's the translation in English, or anglicized. Accordingly, Pilate makes a logical argument to him. To me, you utter not words. To me, you utter not words. You not stare at that I hold authority to let you go, and I hold authority to fence you with stakes. So this implies that Jesus did not utter any words to him, which makes sense based on the translation we had before. But you stare at that I hold authority to let you go, and I hold authority to fence you with stakes. So Pilate wants an answer. Pilate wants an answer. Jesus gives him one. Jesus answers this question. The reason that Jesus didn't answer the other question, what do you think Jesus didn't answer Pilate's other question?
Was it rhetorical? No.
Jesus is good Greek, and good Greek philosopher, good Greek. John, remember I tell you it's logos telos, right? In other words, what is Jesus telling Pilate? It's a kind way of saying figure it out for yourself. But in other words, I have already given you enough information to reach a telek conclusion. Yes. And Pilate gets it. That's why Pilate's response. Pilate's not looking for him to say flat out, I am God, right? In other words, Jesus has already told him that. All the hearers of this know this. Pilate's a pretty smart dude. Jesus answered, you would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over is guilty of a greater sin. Okay. Pretty straightforward, but then look at how long the Greek is. Jesus answered, thou couldst have no power at all against me except it were given thee from above. Therefore, he that delivered to me hath greater sin. Here's the Greek. He concluded for himself to him, Jesus did, know or not, you would hold authority, conferred power, down of me, not even one, if me not or least, it was given to you from above. By analogy from the first. This is really interesting because this is more complex than our translators give us. Through it, the parados, a give, a turnover, hand over to me to deliver with a sense of close involvement, me, to you, great amidst the mark holds. This is an interesting statement. Jesus concluded for himself to him, you would not hold not even one authority down of me if it was not given to you from above, from the first. Through it, the give over of me to you, great amidst the mark holds. The translation isn't too bad, but I think what's really beautiful about this in the Greek is, do you see that Jesus just answered his question? He gave him a stated telos. The stated telos is, you would not hold even one authority if it was not given to you from above, from the first, from the beginning. In other words, from the telos, from the beginning. Remember, the telic cause of the universe is the creation by God. So the telos is what Jesus is pointing to. And you know what? Old Pilate, steeped in philosophy, think he missed this? You know, he doesn't use the word specifically, the word telos, but the word itself, this word anothen, means from above and also from the first. So this in itself is really interesting. And also the second part, through it, the give turnover of me to you, a great a miss the mark holds. Greek does not have what do we call it in English? You know, greater, greatest, whatever. So the use of this is okay. That is, the translation is okay, greater sin. But you notice in Greek, it's a miss the mark. And I think Pilate even understood this idea of miss the mark. You know, we want to think that the Romans, look, the world today seems to not have any perception of sin at all, right? I think it'd be more important, better if we called it miss the mark, the way the Greeks did. Because sin gives you the impression that it's completely internal, that the miss the mark or the sin is just an internal problem, where the Greek idea is that it's the inability or the whether it's lack of prowess, lack of moral, lack of whatever the lack is, that you can't hit the mark. I've been over this before because I think it's very important. And what does Pilate want to do? Pilate wants to succeed, right? He wants to get the tribute. He wants to please his masters in Rome. He wants to be the senator next, right? And if he does a good job, he might be the next senator. That's what governors usually went to, is they became senators. So that's what he wants to do. That's his goal. This may or may not be reassuring to him. I don't know. I'm not a real fan of the use of the word sin, not because it's not true, but because of what it really means. And we've seen also in the Hebrew that it's a little bit different. Now look what it says. From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free. From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free. But the Jewish leaders kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are a friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." The Greek's a little bit different, but similar. Look how long it is. Wow. It's always interesting that we have these short translations and a really long piece of Greek. And then henceforth, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, "If thou let this man go, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whosoever make himself a king speaketh against Caesar." Here's what it says in Greek. From out or among of this, the Pilate was seeking to plot a worship, to let go, release, dismiss, loose away him. But the Judeans, they cried out with a loud screaming and shrieking, especially with articulate sounds, shouted louder, in other words, very loud, making a logical argument. In case that you let go, dismiss, no or not, you are those loving like a shield warrior of the Caesaros of Caesar, all or the whole, the king or ruler himself, making or doing, makes a logical argument against to the Caesar. Let's see what this looks like. Look at how long this is. Out from among this, Pilate was seeking to plot a worship to let him go. But the Judeans cried out with a loud screaming, shrieking, making a logical argument. In case that if you let go, you are not those loving like a shield warrior of Caesar. All the king or ruler himself makes a logical argument against Caesar. All the king or ruler himself making all the king or ruler himself makes a logical argument against Caesar. This is very interesting because Pilate has concluded that Jesus is the King of the Jews. Pilate has also therefore concluded that he is a deity. He claims to be a deity because he is the King of the Jews. Our modern empiricist minds don't like us to make this conclusion ourselves, but this is what Pilate has concluded, which I think is correct, right? Jesus is God. That's what he keeps telling them. That's what John says over and over. Jesus is God, and not just a man, but he is also God. And that Pilate has come to that conclusion. That's what really bothered him. The idea, not just that idea, but the idea of missing the mark really bothered Pilate. This literally was the last straw. You might ask why a Roman was bothered by the idea of missing the mark. In the Hellenized world, the ideas of the Romans, the Greeks, and the Hebrews affected the way people think. The Hebrews would be very interested in Pilate's confession, so to speak. And this is indeed a reasoned statement that does a lot of things. Number one, and I've said this before, but this is the telos of this overall logos. That is that Jesus is king, declared himself king. Judeans recognize Caesar as their king. And also, you notice the term philos is translated friend. Our translators translated philos as friend. When before, what did they translate it as? Love. Well, sometimes they say brotherly love, but that's mostly in the Pauline doctrines. In John, we see philos. As a matter of fact, we are going to see in 21, philos is translated as love, 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 love. And, it's not talking about philos love, the love of shield warrior, right? You notice that, well, if you look back, what I think is interesting in itself, here's the King James. And from henceforth Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, if thou let this man go, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whoever maketh himself a king speaketh against Caesar. And that's not what it says. If you look at the Greek, this implies that it's Caesar's friend is a noun, right? With an adjective that's describing it. But if you look, this is philos, those loving like a shield warrior of the Caesar. So this is a correct thing, but it's Caesar's love, philos, right? So, like I said, out from among this, Pilate was seeking to plot a worship to let him go, but the Judeans cried out with a loud screaming, a logical argument. In case you let go, you are not those loving like a shield warrior. I put it in parentheses, friends of Caesar. All the king or ruler himself makes a logical argument against Caesar. So, like I said, there are 3 points here. Number one, the Judeans recognize Caesar as their king, use the term philos in terms of a friend, when before Jesus used this term, it was translated love. And I just point that out because it's like the term grace when they use hail. Yes, sir.
Well, the Jews are pointing out that Caesar's being illogical here. He's a Roman magistrate. His authority comes from Caesar. You can't call a Jewish guy the king of the Jews if your authority comes from Caesar. So they're saying, what are you saying? This doesn't make sense. You can't possibly say he's king of the Jews. This in itself is interesting. Watch, let's see. Okay, we're going to see this played out even more in the next. So I'm going to wait just a second to explain this.
But your point is good, and I don't disagree with it. But watch what John does for us. John is not. I think all this stuff happened exactly historically the way we see it. I think the words are accurate. Everything's accurate. It is a logos to telos. But John, when he put it together, made sure that we got the logos to telos. I'm sure a lot of other words were flowing and flopping, and things were going on, right? But when the narrator and the writer puts it all together, it's Greek, so it's logos to telos. And he's going to give us the logos to telos, and we'll see what that telos is, because I think it's a beautiful telos. We got Pilate's telos. Now, Pilate, when Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and set him down on the judge's seat in the place known as the stone pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. Ooh, it's long. Ooh, that's really long. Wow, we have a really short thing. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus forth and said, when he heard that saying, it's not just the Jews are talking, but the fact that they claim this claim about Caesar, right? And I think you're right. Oh yeah, your authority comes from. Anyway, it's interesting. Sat down the judgment seat, a place called the pavement, in Hebrew, Gabbatha. According to certainly Pilate, he having heard of the logical argument of them, it's interesting. The logical argument that they're making led exile outside of doors. Jesus started this outside of doors thing, right? He led him outside of doors, outside the synagogue, outside the judicial space, right? Outside of doors, Jesus, and sat down on or against a platform to which someone walked up to receive judgment. It's a dematos, a platform of which someone walked up to receive judgment. To whereupon a spot made a logical argument, a telestrated mosaic, a lithostraton, a tessellated mosaic on which the Roman tribunal was placed. This is really, okay, we want to know more, right? The Greek tells us all kinds of really cool stuff, but what does our translator does? They give us the pavement. Okay, I got the pavement, but it's a lithostraton, and I've got pictures of it to show you. Tessellated mosaic, which the Roman tribunal was placed, Hebraistically, or in the Jewish Chaldee language, the word here is Hebraisti, which means Hebraistically, which is an interesting word anyway, right? But Gabbatha, the knoll, Gabbatha, vernacular term from the Roman tribunal in Jerusalem. So this is really, really cool information. The author gives us the Roman, right? The Roman Greek, the Roman specific name for this place. And then he also adds in the Hebrew name for this place. And you notice one is the knoll, not too exciting, but apparently a place of judgment. But then gives us this beautiful description. And I got pictures. This is what it looks like. This is one that is in color. This is one that is dual color. Which was it? We don't know, but it says specifically that it was of the tribunal, which means it was probably a Roman depiction of justice. So usually, a governor or with a goddess, the goddess of judgment or god of judgment. So this is probably pretty close to your kind of thing. Here is that place where they would go up to. Now, was the mosaic, see, it's a place, tribunal, a place you went for judgment. And this is, I think, supposed to be of Christ or maybe some other guy being, judged. But this is the way it looked in history. And I don't think they had chairs quite big, but that's okay. a few chairs here and there, who cares, right? We had the chosen ones, the chosen guys in their chairs, like Leonardo da Vinci painted them, so I guess it's okay. Yes.
So I understand this design on the floor is a place where they would put the accused person when you're going to pronounce judgment on them. Is that?
Or probably where the tribunal, the judge sat, that conveyed their authority. They said, right? They said to Pilate, well, what you said is even, that you have the authority of Caesar, right? And you gain the authority. Well, this is the authority. This is his authority as the Roman senator or the Roman governor to apply this judgment, right? And so he would probably be on it. And remember, you've seen the chairs. This is really true. The chairs, a few chairs they had, right? Remember that interlocking chair? They're portable chairs. They're really cool. They close up and some, servant carries them, maybe two. And then when they open them, they just put a lion skin or some kind of skin or thing on it, and the guy sits on that chair. So look, how many chairs did you own? These things are very expensive. It's not like you had a set of folding chairs and a bridge table, right, that you could put up. So Pilate probably had one chair, and guess what he did? He said, well, I'm moving my court. Some poor servant, the slave, takes it, carries it over, throws it on top, puts it in here. He's like, that now I'm gone from to judicial, right? From the trial, from trying, from questioning, questionary. The questionary was there. You go look at the Crucifixion of Christ by what's his name, Mel Gibson. Is probably very close to some of the things that were going on, but we can see in the Greek, it's just very descriptive in the Greek of what's going on. Here is what they believe in modern Jerusalem. What has happened in the modern era is a lot of this stuff was destroyed, right? So where is the mosaic? We don't know. If you go to some places in Roman places, you'll see these mosaics. You go to Pompeii, you go to Ephesus, you go to whatever that place was in the Grecian Isles where Mussolini brought. That's really cool that the Greeks own a whole bunch of the Italian, beautiful Italian Roman stuff, because Mussolini thought he was going to control the Greek Isles forever and moved it all to that one castle there. So they put all the statues and all the beautiful stuff, and now the Greeks are like, oh, it's ours, baby. We own it. So they've got, trillions of dollars of antique that's in there that Mussolini actually brought. We don't know what happened to it, but it's gone. And these are pictures of what they call the modern pavement. Are they accurate? Probably what we're seeing here is, 2,000 years of urban renewal. So, the Roman stuff was knocked down and destroyed. They built other things over top of it, and that's all we got left. So this is not at all what it looked like in the time. It was more like what we saw before. So here it goes. It was the day of preparation for the Passover. It was about noon. Here is your king, Pilate said to the Jews. So Pilate just sat on his, at his place of judgment. Think about this. It was preparation of the Passover in about the 6th hour, and he saith unto the Jews, behold your king. It was but to furnish aside the day of preparation for the sap of their feast, the Pascha, the Passover, a time of it was at which the 6th and the 6th hour. And he makes a logical argument to the Judeans belonging to Judea. You look, the bacillus of you. But it was the day of the preparation of the Passover. It was which house, 6th period, an hour. And he makes a logical argument to the Judeans. You look, your king or ruler. What is significant about this? Why did Pilate do this? What is he doing right now? He moved from the place of question and trial to the place of judgment. What did Pilate just do?
Jesus.
He declared Jesus the King of the Judeans. Before, it wasn't a question. He was talking to Jesus. He was talking to the Judeans. He's saying, you want me to kill your king? La, la, la. You're going, but it's a back and forth. It's a logical argument. It's a reason. It's logos. This is to tell us. Pilate's a good Roman. He's going to give us a conclusion. He's going to give us a great telos, and he just did. He sat on the judgment seat of the tribunal judgment seat. And he just declared, makes a logical argument to the Judeans. You look, your king. He's declaring it. Now, how far we want to take this? I think you can take it a long ways. If Pilate declared him to be the king of the Judeans, he also declared him to be a deity. He acknowledged him as a deity. He acknowledged him. And you say, well, why isn't Pilate afraid that Jesus as a deity is going to lead, the scourge of heaven, the angels of heaven down on him? Why do you think he doesn't? He may be shaking in his boots. You can't know the mind of a guy. This is great literature and great history. It's showing you what's happening. It's not telling you what's happening. It's not telling you what's in the mind of Pilate. It's showing you, right? So Pilate could be there shaking in his boots. Why isn't Pilate as worried as maybe we would think we would be? Remember the question of the Acts and the Hebrews? The question that the New Testament asks, that it answers for us. Does this God and this Savior apply to us? This is a question of the Greeks and the Romans. Does this God and this Savior apply to us? Pilate, he may be shaking his boots, but he has concluded that I am going to get away with this, whatever's going to happen, because maybe this Jesus does have the power, but what is his faith in? What is his belief in? Pilate believes what is going to protect him and keep his legion safe. Mithras, not Zeus, who's the head of the gods for the Romans? Jupiter, Jove, whatever. His gods, the Roman gods, defeated the Hebraic gods, right? So who is he going to put his belief or faith or trust in? I'm trusting they're going to take care of me, right? That's his trust. It's deeply seated. He may have concluded that Jesus is deity, that Jesus is who he says he is, but he has that same question. Does this apply to me? Right? Now, Jesus kind of gave him a little slack because it's Harmontius, missed the mark. But he didn't tell Pilate, you better pack and get ready because you're going to get fired and everything's going to be bad. So Pilate's still open. He's hoping among hopes. Who's going to take the blame for this? When he has to write to Caesar and say, Caesar, I killed the king of the Jews, and I killed probably a deity. He's going to write his letter. It's in the Archcode documents, by the way. You should read it. It's pretty cool. Not quite in. I'm extemporizing. Not quite to this degree. He was apologizing or explaining to Caesar and to the Senate why he did what he did. But he expects the people to take the blame to be the Judeans and the priests. And he's going to cast that off. Now watch what happens, because I think he's really good about this. Let's see, did I do this? Yeah, the day of preparation, it was the 6th hour. He makes a large garment of Judeans. You look, your king. And I also have, of course, information for you. The Roman hours. Here's the Roman hours. This is summer solstice, winter solstice. So we're probably winter solstice. Winter solstice tells us that the 6th hour is approximately 11 o'clock, 15 minutes, and 30 seconds. They couldn't measure that closely, but about 11 o'clock. So it's interesting that our thing, because it's either 10 or 11. So it's before noon. They shouted, take him away, crucify him. Shall I crucify your king? Pilate asked. We have no king but Caesar. The chief priest answered. This is going to be very interesting. Look how long this is. Oh my goodness. They cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate saith unto them, shall I crucify your king? The chief priest answered, we have no king but Caesar. They cried out with a long screaming and shrieking, la la la. Certainly and accordingly, those ones there, you lift up. You lift up. You fence with stakes. Starosim. You crucify him. Makes a logical argument to them, the Pilate. Pilate makes a logical argument. Drusilla, the ruler, the sovereign of you, I shall fence with stakes. They concluded for themselves, the chief priests, no or not, we hold a king, if not Caesar. Of course, we need to put this into the English thing. Look how long this is. Only those were those ones there. Only those ones that have cried out in loud screaming and shrieking. You lift up. You lift up. You fence them with stakes. Look at this. How did Jesus say he was going to die? He was going to be lifted up. Well, he uses the words lifted up, right? I really wish that our translators would translate, because the translators told us before that Jesus said he would be lifted up to signify the death he would die, right? The Jews literally say, lift him up, right? So if we were reading this or listening to this and the translation was good, better translation, it would say, lift him up, right? Because that is exactly what Jesus prophesied as one of the C19, right? That he would be lifted up. And then it goes on to say, you fence him with stakes. So what they say is you lift up, and you fence him with stakes. Where our translators in both the NIV and the Greek basically said, well, here they say, away with him, away with him. The NIV says, crucify him, right? Pilate makes a logical argument to them. Your king of ruler, I shall fence with stakes. This is not a question. Our translators gave us a question. Should I crucify your king? Pilate has already made that Pilate's already said, he is the king of the Jews, of the Judeans, period. I shall fence with stakes. I shall crucify your king and ruler. The chief priest, and you notice, okay, Pilate makes a logical argument. This is based on his judgment. I shall fence with stakes your king and ruler. The high priest concluded for themselves, we hold no king or ruler if not Caesar. You see what they just did? I got it right here. This is an absolute blasphemy. The chief priest just blasphemed. Remember they said that Jesus claimed to be God? Jesus claimed to be the Messiah? Jesus claimed this stuff? What did the high priest, the chief priest, just claim? Caesar is their God. That is absolutely correct. He's not just their king, their ruler, They have just claimed that Caesar is their God. Now, unfortunately, our translators don't give this away to us. We miss this whole point. This is some really good, deep stuff. The Greek hearers of this, what do you think? The Greek and the Roman hearers of this? They know exactly what's going on. They got it. They're like, oh yeah, man, we get this. You see this? What's your reaction? I mean, I'm telling you, I think the Greeks, the Romans are more like modern Germans or Germans. I'm not sure there's any humor. I mean, if you read their comics or see their comedy shows, you go, it ain't Monty Python. You go, ah. So I think the Roman stand-up comedians probably didn't do a great job in the world, but the Greeks are full of comedy. Even their comedy is full of tragedy, and their comedy that's full of tragedy, we don't get it. It's not ludicrous, but it is striking. With this statement, you can either laugh or cry. If you're a good Greek or Roman, you're probably laughing because you just heard the high priest state an absolute blasphemy. That's a wonderful irony. Yes, sir.
But it's clear that they are not in fear of Caesar, or in fear of Pilate, because they're in your face refuting what he just said. So they're not worried about repercussions of doing that with Pilate.
I'll go even further. They're not afraid of the repercussions from God. Yeah. Pilate, okay. I know we hate Pilate, right? We love to hate Pilate. I think the Chosen really did a bad job of doing Pilate. I know some people like him, that's okay. But I want to see what they do with Pilate in the next series, the next thing. But the thing that I got about Pilate is he's got that Roman side and he's got that Greek side. So he's got the reasoning and he's got the, I hate to use the word faith, but he's got the trust in God's side, right? It's just he's trusting in the wrong gods, right? This is the message we forget. That is the message to the whole world through the New Testament. The New Testament is not just about Jesus and God as Jesus and God, but the message is that they are not just local Savior and God. The God does not just apply to the Levant and to Israel and to the small parts, right? This God applies to the world, and it's going to be proven because this is going to go like wildfire through the Greek world. It's going to go like wildfire through the Roman world. And the people here are seeing this occur. So we know this is going to happen, but Pilate is the average Roman dude who believes in his gods and is watching something unfold of a supernatural nature, and he has made his conclusion. The next step for Pilate, what's the next step for Pilate? Does this God and Jesus apply to me? We don't know if Pilate ever made a decision, was convinced of Christ. He was convinced that Christ was deity. He was convinced. And do you see the problem here? This is reflected in the scripture. You can acknowledge Christ as sovereign. You can acknowledge Christ as the Savior. But if you do not what to Christ?
Make him Lord of your life and follow him. Act on it.
Bingo. That is the whole point. The demons in hell know that Jesus Christ is the Savior and God. They just are not convinced that he is, well, whatever you look at, can they be convinced, right? Maybe they can, maybe they can't. Depends on what's that?
They're in rebellion. They don't like it. It's the truth that they don't like it. Which is basically, our society, it's no surprised that our society's acting out in literally demonic ways, because there's reality and it's obvious, but we don't like it. Therefore, we're going to be in rebellion against it.
Bingo. We don't like the idea that somebody tells us what is good and bad and what is right and wrong. That is the biggest problem with society and culture. Pilate is good. Pilate has it down, but he needs to take the step. And that is, by the way, that is the whole message of the Acts and of the letters of Paul and of the New Testament within a telos conclusion, right? Here is the deity. What are you going to do with him? You're going to pile him up with the other, I got my deity pile over here, right? I got my deity pile. I got altars to all these. Remember, you have an altar to every god. You even have an altar to an unknown God. But
I'll tell you all about the unknown God.
I'll tell you about the God, right? Yes, the unknown God who was the creator. And the minute you said that to the Greeks, because the Greeks were always looking for the creator. We'll talk about that at some point. But anyway, this is the blasphemy. And so we'll get to this, 9:16. Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. And so we'll go into the crucifixion next. But, I love it that, we as English speakers and English readers, we want to know more, right? Do you notice the Greek has lots more? I'm not going to crucify our translators. Yes, ma'am.
I feel like there's a lot of, we were talking about ironies here in recent weeks, but I feel like there's a lot of irony in their statement too, because the Jews hated the Romans and they wished the Messiah would take the Romans away, but they clearly don't believe they have no king but Caesar. They're just using the Romans, but it's showing they hated Jesus more than they hated the Romans, because they're willing to pledge allegiance to the Romans, even if they don't really mean it. They're just using the Romans to get rid of Jesus. So, what an irony, because Jesus was the Messiah, the one they were looking to ostensibly to get rid of the Romans.
Jesus, derangement syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
JDS?
Yeah,
JDS?
I mean, that's basically that's what they had. Yeah.
I need to, maybe we should start posting that on your social media, JDS, Jesus, and we'll attribute you. That's good. That's good.
Is that a t-shirt business?
Oh, we need a t-shirt. Yeah, Jesus derangement syndrome. Yeah. I'll leave you with this. The question I would have, we are empiricists. So we can imagine people that would lie. And I don't think your conclusions are bad. I just think there is a question. Are they completely truthful, or are they being ambiguous, or are they being intentionally, because this, you almost have to conclude that they don't really trust in Yahweh.
Well, that's obvious, but yeah. But they're also, they didn't want Caesar to be their king. They didn't want to be under the Romans, but they're saying what they think Pilate wants to hear, an argument which they think will be a trump card to get Jesus killed.
I don't disagree with that, and the good Greek in us all should say, yeah, we get that, but also the good Greek and Roman in us should say, and the good Hebrew in us should say, are you allowed to lie in a logos? Well, the Greeks would say you lied in a logos. The Hebrews would probably say, what's a logos? Right? And the Romans would go, you can't do that. Now tell me to tell us. Right? So anyway, culturally, I don't think you bring up a bad point. I just think it's interesting. It's a dichotomy, cultural. It's a huge cultural thing. Anyway, thank you, Father, for your word, for you look at this week. In your name we pray. Amen.
The other gospels actually say his blood is on our heads.
Yeah.
go even farther
Yeah.
in
Well,
their
they take
denial.
that, they take that curse on.
Yeah.